So now into the rendering chapter. One of my most favorite features of 601 is RenderBooleans. So I'm going to show you what they can do, then show you something kind of fun with it, and then show you something actually a little more practical. So from the Layout tab, let's go to Electronic Devices. This is part of your installed modo601 content. Some of it was there with 501. And let's double-click the telephone. We'll add that in and jump over to the Render tab. And let's press the A key. It'll fit that to view. And if those locators, the texture locator bothers you, press the O command and turn off locators. And that box will go away. I've actually had people email me that. What's this box? Let's turn off lights and cameras too. All right. So we've got a phone. And let's just say your client says, well, that's great. It looks good. You did this job. But he's like, I need to kind of slice it open so people understand there's inner workings. Easy enough. Go to Items. From the Add item, you're going to go down to Volumes and choose Render Boolean. Now, Boolean, for those of you that have been in 3D, know that a Boolean is a way you can cut something or add or subtract. Well, Render Boolean is even better because it clips away and you don't destroy your geometry. All right, so let me just scale this down here. You can already see it just ate away my phone. But look what it's doing. You can't see it in layout. You can't see it in the camera view. You see it on the render. So just keep that in mind. This is a Render Boolean. Now, I'm going to show you at the end of this video how you can animate these and make something really cool. But kind of think of the idea here with this chord. Well, if I scale this down to the right size, if I get this just so, can actually make it look like this chord is animating on. See that? And that's what we're going to do at the end of the video, something very similar to that using the spline deformers. Okay, but taking it a step further, let's take a look at the phone. It just cuts away, and what's cool about it is that it not only cuts away, it actually leaves behind a surface, which is really nice. Now, you can do a lot more with this. You can come in here and change that particle geometry to a cube and make it very linear and terrific for those of you that are doing architecture. Let's close this out. Back to the layout. And I don't believe, do we have any hardware in here? I mean, any homes in here? I don't think we do. I think we do some most interiors. Here's a room. Let's see. This is a restaurant scene I believe we got from the Luxology Asset Library. So let's just say you've got this nice interior you want to work with. Okay. Come over here to the Render tab. Beautiful interior. Very nice. No surfacing on there. That's okay. We're going to do this just for illustrative purposes only. Going to go to Add Item, Volumes, Render Boolean, and I'm going to change it from a sphere to a cube, and then we're going to increase the scale of it. And then let's make sure that's intersecting. Where are you? He's on the bottom there. So just like that, you can very easily take a client and say, okay, well, here's what your render, here's what your building will look like, and in an animation, you can actually open it up for them. And let's put on some globe illumination. Just get a little more light in there. I just basically cut off that roof live while your client is, making changes. You can just instantly open that up over time. So you can just keyframe any of these values. Now there's a way, though, you can have it affect only one area. And I'm going to show you that when we do our animation. But that's actually just a really cool thing. Okay, so let's go on a little bit further with this. You don't have to use a box or a ball. You can use your own shape too. And I'm going to do that. So let's come up here to Human. And let's do something mean to this guy. Got a nice little head here. We're going to add a volume, a Render Boolean, and we'll scale it down about like that. And we'll pop this up here. And we'll pop it forward. Jump to the Render tab. Oh no, it hurts! Cut it out! Kidding. Excuse me. Did you know there's a hole in your head? All right. So we've got this nice little object here. Now, I can add actual geometry to cut this away. So right now we're using the default render Boolean geometry, but I can take a model, for instance, like a ball, and I can scale this down. About like that. About like so. And let's turn off, well, I'm not going to turn off anything yet. What I can also do is just modify this ball. Come over here real quick. Take that shape, press the T key for element move, and I'm getting my, I'm getting the pose tool. It's not what I want. And let's just select this sphere. And let's just shape it a bit. So you can have any kind of shape you want. In this case, we're just doing this crazy little thing. You can also come in here to fall off and set it to noise, and then increase or decrease based on the noise. Let's hit the D key, and then there we go. So let's do that instead. Save us a little time. So noise fall off, and then I just size that. So back in the render Booleans, now we've got this big clump of gum that's on his head. The render Boolean right now is set to sphere, so select the render Boolean and hit use surface. And what is the surface's volume? Well, that is our new sphere, which I should call gum or something. Gum. Okay, so now I'm taking that crazy shape that I made and using that to cut a hole in his head. So imagine a map, or you know, any kind of science animation, or a specific shape you need to open up a valve to see inside it and see particles flowing in fluid and things like that. But wait, there's more. In the shader tree, we can actually put some surfaces on there. So for the gum, I'm going to right click on it and say create item mask. And with that gum, I can come into the material setting, add some noise, and that noise now is being applied in there as well. I'll scale it down so you can see it. Just tiny little bits of noise. And then let's go back here to the texture layers and change that color to, oh, I don't know, we have to go red, don't we? Alright, so now the color of that gum is actually affecting where it's being cut. And what if I right click on this and create an instance, and then I change the surface amount to a bump map? Now that's also being applied inside there. And then let's make that bump a little bit larger. So we'll go here to the material itself and bring this up to about 20 millimeters. Now you're seeing some bumps being applied inside there as well. Alright, so just another fun thing you could do with render Booleans to give you an idea that, you know, you don't have to stick with just the default shapes that are there with the default tool. And don't forget that you can animate this as well. So you want to animate this guy, we will take the scale and I'll press create a key at 0, and I'm going to scale it down. Just about like that. And over maybe 90 frames, we're going to scale it up, and this hole is just going to grow inside his head. He's going to scream for mercy. Oh, my head hurts. Can eat away his face too. All right, and now you've just animated that hole opening up on his head. Silly, dumb, yes, but fun. Then put a skin shader on there, like we did earlier. Take that guy's face, open up that material, go to custom materials, add a skin material, and all of it blends together. I'll save this so you can have fun with it too. Hole in the head. Okay, now for something a little more serious. From your file menu, open up from your scenes folder, and that is in your movies, 601 core scenes. Load up the chart. Where are you, chart? Animated chart. There you go. Load that up. We're not going to build the whole thing. I'm just going to run through it with you now that you've seen all these parts. Plus, it's a doozy to render. All right, very simply, what this is actually for a small project I was doing. I'm going to take the chart itself. Okay, it's nothing more than, obviously, a box, but a cylinder. And let me show you how that cylinder is made, because I might not have shown you that. Okay, the chart itself is just a box, but I actually used a tube like this and went just like that. Made sound effects too. And the sides, though, I brought down to about 5, something like that. So that is actually how the elements are made, except for not that bad corner like that. Okay, and then these, of course, were brought together, you know, with a nice curve like that and straightened out and everything else. And then tab keys on, right? If we put that on, this rounds it out. So shift, double click each one of these edges. And the only reason this was done this way is just to give it a little more something. Give it a little something extra. Rather than just a box or just a round sphere. These chart lines were just built like this just to be different. And then just a slight bevel. Make sure group is on. Now when you hit the tab key, they're not quite as round. It's kind of like a nice bar like that, okay? So that is actually how those lines are made right there. All right. The other thing you're going to see is a lot of little points. So early in the course, we did a lot about spline deformers with our snake. And you can see a tall tube right here. Well, that's exactly what's happening. I built a tall tube. I added a spline deformer to it, and then I put those splines in place, boom, 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 over each one of these lines. And then, over time, simply animated those. Let's see if we can rewind here. Now, this was built on a larger system that had a little more power than this computer. But if you take a look at that shape right there, you can actually see it moving down. And all it's doing, it's just a tube that's wrapped around that bar. Okay, because the theory behind this was, all right, well, if a render Boolean cuts away something, and then a spline deformer animates a tube over a path, let's say, or a snake or something else, why can't those two things be combined? So this was kind of a, I don't want to say a backwards way, but typically you would think of building on that chart line, right? Instead, I'm cutting it away. And like I said, this is a heavy-duty calculation. It wasn't on my main system, which is actually 3 years old, but this laptop, even though it's about a year old, doesn't have a ton of memory into it. All right, good. So basically what these round bars are doing are cutting away. They're built just tall round tubes, spline deformers added, and then the spline points are put in place over the chart lines, which are built with the tube that I just showed you. Then that tube is moved up and down, which of course just follows the path. So if you haven't watched the snake animation tutorial setting up those spline deformers, I recommend you do so. But the problem is we're seeing our white boxes here cutting away. So what we want to do is avoid that. So here's what this chart looks like with the animated Booleans on there. All right, and all it is just that render Boolean just animated with a spline deformer. All right. Now the scene is actually pretty large, and it's a little slow to work with because there's so much geometry in that render Boolean to make it smooth. So I'm going to set up a real simple one just to show you how this was animated on. And this is it right here, okay, that I was showing you. I'm going to create an entirely new scene because it's just taking entirely too long with this scene because there's so much geometry in there. But it's the same idea here where we've got a cylinder. And we'll just draw it out like this, down the X. I'll pull it out like that. Okay. And then let's center it out. Center selected all. And what we're going to do, just like we did earlier in the course, you can right-click on it and change any kind of values that you want. Or we can come down to the mesh itself, add deformer, effector, spline effector, and I think we'll do, let's see how big this is. 100, this is 2 meters in length, and the reason I know it's 2 meters is because our grid is 100 millimeters, so there's 10 of them in each one of these squares, so 2 meters. All right, so we want 2 meters down the X, and let's do maybe just 6 splines. Okay, so we get these nice curves, and let's just pretend this is our chart. Okay, so I'll hit my W command, and just like the snake, we can move these in place. So all I did was really just go in and move each one of these into place, following the chart that I had built. We'll select each one of these. And then the mesh itself, there's our spline deformer. Now I need this to actually be in the Animate tab so we can see it deforming. The reason my chart was becoming so slow is because you see how this chunks around here? So I actually hit the D key quite a few times to subdivide that. And while it's pretty simple here, on the chart I have a huge amount of geometry in order to get that to be smooth all the way around. So now when I move this on the x-axis, that's moving, okay? So that spline deformer was actually set up over my existing pole. So let's pretend that this was it right here, okay? What's ended up happening is that this becomes my cutaway. So let me come back and add a little more to this. So we'll take another mesh, new mesh layer, and we're going to start creating what would be our chart. So I'm using the tube command here, and let's scale the radius down. Now I'd mentioned that I only had 4 or 5 sides. And we'll scale that down really small, like this. Okay. And so that's our chart, just made with a tube. So press M, chart. So now we have our spline deformer. Let's come back over here to animate. And when this is moving, it's moving around there. Now I don't have it exactly lined up, so we need to move that spline a little bit. It's probably easier if we just move the spline. Okay, so we have the chart, and then I just line this up right based on that. So it really wasn't too hard. It's just really slow going with that much geometry in the one Boolean. Okay, so that's working pretty well. So now the way to get this to work, to clip away, is we're going to add volumes, render Boolean, and for that render Boolean, we're going to say use surface, and then, of course, I didn't rename my meshes. So this one is going to be cutaway, or cutter, or something like that. And this one is chart. And I'm creating polygon materials, but we're also going to rename these too. This is chart. And this guy here is our cutter. And so with this render Boolean, the surface we want is the cutter. Now let's come here to render Boolean. And now when you do that, what happens is that the remove surface button is on. See that? So I'm using the cutter by telling it remove surface. And then let's take the cutter, press W, and just move it on the X. And so basically we started here, like that. And if it's a little small, what I did, you go in here into your deform, and we can use some of these tools in here. Actually, we'd probably go into polygon mode, smooth shift, and just kind of fatten that sucker up a little bit. All right. So the render Boolean is using this little snake. It's rendering over our chart, and it's clipping away. And then it's just a matter of animating this like that. And let's, of course, get the camera in there so you can see what I'm doing. And there is that animated animated render boolean, and it looks like the chart line is growing. So just a tube to build the chart line, and then another tube with spline deformers on to deform it. But one step further, and this goes for any kind of render boolean you're doing. Let's just say there's a frame in there, there is a chair in your architectural, or in this case, part of the chart we don't want clipped away, like this ball. Well, the cutter, as I move it, will cut right through there. That's not what we want. Okay, we don't want the cut to cut everything. And you can change that in here. So I'm going to make sure we select this ball. What you need to do is go into the shader tree, and for the ball material, go to the material transmissive category, and then down under clipping, there's enable surface clipping. Well, just turn that off. And now your object, that surface, won't clip away. So we'll go back to the cutter, and we'll move it. And so now it's only clipping just the part we want. And that's it. So that's how that animated chart was done. And I closed it so I can't show you, but it's on there if you want to look at it. Okay, so render booleans, a lot of fun and actually still pretty powerful, mixed with spline deformers. You can do quite a few good things. Let's move on to the next video and talk about just general rendering.